Okay, you wanted to talk about the Ares Prima base in
Okay.
this session. I got there through the jump gate from New York City to Ares Prima. I don't remember exactly where it is. It's
Mhm.
like it's been like the details have been blocked. But every time I look at a map of Mars, like on Google Mars, I'm instantly drawn to Mons Olympus. So my feeling is that that's a probable site for it.
Mhm.
Uh, we we were the entire base was underground because anything that was left outside got destroyed. I don't know how many levels down it went. I know that where the school was deeper than most because they obviously wanted their kids protected and safe. Uh, we had a cafeteria. We had several classrooms for different ages. Um, most of the German kids lived with their parents.
Mhm.
The kids the kids who were not German, who were basically already enlisted in the militia, were in barracks, and they were not separated by gender, any of them. And there were 12 kids per barracks room. We were assigned there by the batches where we came from Earth, which is kind of funny because they later told us that Earth didn't exist. So I'm sure the people at the at the base knew Earth existed. They just didn't tell us. Um, everybody that lived there had chores to to maintain the colony part. It was actually a military base with most of the Germans were married couples and were encouraged to have children. So they had lots of kids. And most of the moms were full-time moms, and they
Mhm.
did their chores while the kids were at school. I know there was a CIA presence there from the time I got there because Andy Bajago talks about that he showed up at Aries Prime about the same time that I did, within a couple of years, and that he was in a section for very important people, according to the CIA, and that most of those kids had been seen in the chronovisors to become leaders in either America or Europe. And so they were there to be taught the truth from the CIA perspective about what space was about. I know some of the animals and beings that he talks about seeing there, I don't remember them at all. But he was outdoors a lot more than I was. So maybe the war killed them off. But for food, we had basically, you would call them 3D printers, and they used a lot of, I guess the polite term would be recycled products. Uh, and they didn't always recycle them very well, so the taste was generally really bad.
Wow.
We had prepackaged foods that I'm not sure where they were manufactured, but you just added water and heated them. And most of them were carbs, carbohydrate based. The ones we had were mostly dehydrated imitations of German food.
For example, like what?
Schnitzel, uh, sausages. Sausages with potatoes were a real popular item. Oatmeal, um, something they called muesli for breakfast. The inevitable powdered eggs that they have in any military. We would have desserts once in a while. There was an ET fruit that they brought in. I don't know where it was from. It looked like bananas, but tasted like strawberries.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually pretty good. And we had our hydroponic gardens where we grew a lot of fresh greens. When I first got there, it was mostly salad greens, and later on they added in other vegetables. They got larger. The grounds for it spread out more as we got more people. So they grew more things. The fresh food was grown hydroponically. We had grow lights, and we took really good care of it because that was the only really decent food we had. I don't know if they talk about it in Russia, but in America, they talk about they're starting to grow things like hamburger from cells.
Yeah, meat cells. Yeah.
We were doing that with pork, and it would take it a while to grow. So the day we got shaved pork from the cells, that was like a really special treat to have actual meat instead of something dehydrated or from the replicator.
How often would you have meat, for example? This grown, artificially grown meat.
About twice a month.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that the soldiers had it about once a week,
Okay.
but the rest of us got it twice a month. They considered it to be like an iron supplement that we required.
Right.
So I don't know why they chose pork instead of beef, unless it's something about the the German cuisine. But we didn't have dairy at all, so there was
No
no
milk.
no milk. Cheeses came, but they were in the prepackaged stuff. I will say that their macaroni and cheese was excellent.
Mm-hmm.
If you put the right amount of water in and cooked it exactly the right length of time in the microwave, it came out like baked
Mm-hmm.
Italian macaroni and cheese, the good stuff.
So that was prepackaged, and the rest was 3D printed. Did you guys come to a vending machine, or in the cafeteria where like were there like slots for different foods, or how did that work? How did you get your food personally?
You went through a line,
Uh-huh.
and there would be a person.
Uh-huh.
I don't, sometimes they were slaves and sometimes they were not. The German culture did have slaves doing a lot of what they considered manual work. I did not see any mistreated unless they were trying to rebel.
Uh-huh.
But they did have a collar,
Yep.
a shock collar, so that if they rebelled, they would be punished. Um, they you would tell the person what you would prefer, and they would tell you what was available. But a lot of it depended on your rank in the community and your credits and your value to the community. If you were in school, you did not have the same value as the military or the officers.
Interesting.
Pregnant women got treated a lot better than anyone but the officers, though.
Okay.
They were valued.
Did you have like stores, shops on the base, or was it unnecessary? Could people go and use some of their whatever money or credits to buy things that are like extra?
I don't remember any stores.
Okay.
I don't even remember owning the clothing. I remember I would take a shower and take my clothes off and leave them stacked on the chair in the bathroom. And when I came out, there would be clean ones. And I never knew if they were the ones I had worn before or not, or if they were someone else's. That continued even through my military career, even into Nachtwaffen. You didn't own anything. Nothing was yours. It belonged to the community. And that's part of why I don't believe this rebel alliance exists. Or if it does not include any of the Germans. Because you don't own anything. And we all had a chip in our head that if we thought about rebelling, we would get a serious headache. If we kept thinking about it, we'd have a seizure. And if we really kept thinking about it, our head would be blown off and we would wake up in the regeneration tank. Oh, the regeneration tanks. They're about 3 meters high and 2 meters across. And they're like a plexiglass side. And you're hung from a hook with wires that go into your spine if you had it. If all they found is your brain, they go into the bottom of whatever tissue is available. And you're suspended in this green gel. And while you're in it, you have no physical sensation at all. It's like you could be completely disembodied as far as you can tell. There is no sensation, no sensory input at all. And while you're in there, it's dark. And the plexiglass is blacked out, so you can't see in or out. And from the outside, there's a computer about the size of an Apple tablet that's on it, and it has a little slot for a blood sample from before they found whatever's left of you. And so they match you up with your original blood sample, and they can set it for an age and a weight. So women stay between 25 and 29 the whole time they're gone, once they get to that age. And men stay between 30 and 35. That's what the Germans considered to be the prettiest for women and the most efficient for men. So we were ranked by our looks as well as our abilities. So they tried to keep us a little bit on the plump side too. They said it made us more efficient. So there were no skinny model types. We looked more like Russian peasants, the women with the Okay, the way that Americans just show photos, it's these Russian peasants carrying logs on their heads.
Oh, okay, okay.
This is what they show us of your people. I figured it was an extreme example.
Yep,
But yeah, we were like farm people, the way they kept us.
I see.
We were not fat. We were usually very muscular, but we were not thin either. We were sturdy.
So,
And
okay.
if we were attacked by a raptor or a mantid, if we were unarmed, we'd still be dead. But if we had weapons, we could defend ourselves and usually came away the victor. So if we had been some skinny, cute, helpless little thing, we would have never made it.
So you wake up in the tank, you feel nothing, and just by the time they think you're ready, they pull you out by themselves. You don't get to get out, or how does it work?
You're stuck in there till they open the hatch and pull you out.
Okay.
And the first thing they do is they pull you out, and you're naked, and they put you on the floor, and they hose you off. And that they use water. And there's a drain underneath, and all of that goo goes into the drain and is separated from the water and put back in the tank.
I see.
The gel is very important because it's made out of black goo. It has the Germans lease these from the Mantid Empire. Not the same people as the Mantids we were fighting on Mars. Those were a different race. But they leased them from the Mantid Empire, and I understand that the gel is really expensive to replace. So they recycle it as much as they can. Every so often, they have to clean the bottom of the tank out because anything that they had inserted in the people, or the poisons from the spider bites, the chips. Some people had weapons inserted into their arms. They would have, like, from the elbow down would be a gun instead of a hand. All of that would come loose and fall to the bottom of the tank. So they'd have to clean that out every so often to get all the stuff out. And it could be anything from nanobots, chips, circuitry, enhancements, any of that stuff.
Okay. And the water, how was the water recycled and everything?
The water would be put through a purification system.
But where would you get water first?
First off, you get water from underground. Mars has a frozen ocean about a mile underground in the northern hemisphere and about 3 miles underground in the southern hemisphere. The dirt level is almost 2 miles lower in the northern hemisphere than the south. So it's like something sucked all the dirt away. And there were competing stories from ETs about what happened. Just put it that way. Every ET race out there has their own story to tell, and they are the hero of it. It's like listening to Vikings.
Sure.
Seriously.
So
they each tell the story, and it's different from everybody. So you're sitting there going, this didn't match up with that at all. Are you guys telling the same story, the same events? And they get real mad when I'd ask them that. So you
Yes.
got to where you just listened, filed it, said, okay, we have this here, this story here, this story here, this story here. You know, the only points that, okay, I have heard the history of the Milky Way galaxy from 4 separate races. The only points they have in common are that Earth humans, as we are now, were created from Homo erectus by the addition of ET DNA. That's it. That's the only points they have in common. So, you know, when you start listening to these guys, you go, alrighty, they think they're making perfect sense. Okay, back to where we were.
Okay, about the
Where
water.
does the water
Yeah,
come?
did you have pumps?
The water,
Yeah.
the water comes from these frozen
Uh-huh.
oceans. And when it froze, all the salt went to the bottom.
Oh, okay.
So as you chip away at the ice, you've got fresh drinking water.
Uh-huh.
But it's fossil water. Once it's all gone, it's gone. So we've been very protective of it. You can't just go and mine it without permission from high command. And that was something I think the Draco insisted on, because they tend to protect the resources of the worlds they own.
Okay.
Humans don't do that. But when we do take the water, it's recycled and purified and cleaned, and all the stuff we did to it is taken out of it. Now, you need to know showers and things like that are not with water. They're with sound. You are actually bathed with sound instead of water. You don't use soap because you can't dissolve it in sound. But it strips all the excess oils off your skin and takes off the sweat and the dirt and everything. It does an excellent job.
How does it look?
And the toilet,
The shower. What does it look like? If you don't have you don't need the drain and the tap, right? The shower head, whatever. What do you go into, and how long does it take to shower?
you go into, it's like glass doors, and it's a rectangular shape, and the sound comes from the top of it like a ceiling. And whatever dirt and stuff is on you does collect at the bottom. So that has to be cleaned up afterwards.
Oh, okay.
So you do have to clean the shower. And you come out and you're dry and you put your clean clothes on. And the toilet also operates under a combination of air and sound. And you don't have to use paper to clean yourself. It's like a bidet, except that it's sound and air, and you come out dry. It's really a lot more efficient than what we use on Earth. And they recycle everything. Everything gets recycled. So most of the human waste can't be used in the hydroponic gardens or even where they attempted to grow stuff up above ground. They did try that. I remember being out there with kids doing plows, like Earth style. We didn't have animals to draw it, so the kids did, because this was it seems to me it was an agriculture class, probably about 12, 13 years old. And so we had our field above ground that we were supposed to grow things. And the wildlife kept eating it. We were never sure exactly what it was that was eating it, because there's a lot of things out there. Lots of reptiles. Most of them are lizards or snakes, little guys up to about 3-4 feet long. So roughly a meter in length, give or take a little. And they would be out there, and most of them are carnivorous and will eat each other before they would eat a plant, because a lot of the plants died whenever that atmosphere was taken. But they would still come taste it.
Okay.
I don't know about the deer in your country, but the deer where I live, the baby ones will taste everything.
Okay.
Even poisonous. And that was what these guys were acting like, was like, we've never seen this before. Let's see if it's edible. The humans are growing it. It must be edible. Okay. So they would get to the point where that they were leafing out and starting to look pretty decent, and they would suddenly be eaten. And we suspected that it was the reptiles, because there were so many of them. But there is a burrowing animal, a mammal, that looks a lot like a capybara. Okay. For the audience, even the Americans don't always know what a capybara is. It's like a half-meter long guinea pig with legs.
Right.
Except in these cases, the legs were for burrowing, so they were thicker, and they had burrowing claws, and their eyes didn't open as much. And they were herbivores. So they probably, looking back on it, they were probably our culprit. Because they tended to, you'd go along and see a bush just go underground. Mars, where I was, had an assortment of small bushes, shrubs, wildflowers after it rained. Some really tough grasses. Most of the plants were really tough because it gets so cold at night. We're talking the temperature range of the Arctic every night, even in summer. It might get up into temperate temperatures in the daytime in summer, but as soon as that sun is down, it gets cold fast. So all of the plants there were adapted to that sudden everyday shock of getting cold. And they were thick and had their water would suck from the outer leaves into the stems so that they wouldn't freeze during the night. They had some really adaptive kinds of behaviors. And most of the animals either burrowed or lived in caves. I had lots of run-ins with the spiders. The native mantids kept them as pets and had telepathic links. So I would be sent to pick up a mounted for interrogation for intel, and I'd almost always be eaten by a spider and wake up in a regen tank. Once a mounted actually got me, interrogated me, and because it was just one-on-one, and at that point I was pretty much helpless, it let me go. But it made it clear that she thought I was a demon from their perspective because I was working with the Germans.
Okay, back to the base.
Back to the base.
Okay. The power. How was the base powered?
The base was powered through 0-point energy.
Mm-hmm.
They literally took it out of the spin of the planet.
Mm-hmm.
It was an angular momentum machine. And I can't go into more details than that because I don't remember. I'm doing good to remember the names because a lot of that was I've talked about that I had this big lump of memories in German. I've got about half of them sorted out. The other half are in technical German that I haven't relearned yet. So a lot of specifications and how things are built are still in that lump. But I know it was from the angular momentum of the planet's spin because there was a big argument just before I left there about that if they had too many of those machines, they would slow down the orbit and make the day longer and possibly shift it out of the Goldilocks zone. So they were actually paying attention to the side effects of their technology and were considering using a different kind of technology to power things. So,
And on the base, would you have like light switches, regular, that would switch the lights on, or
no,
no? Okay.
it was all sensors. If it sensed a person, the lights would go on, and they were not incandescent. There weren't light bulbs. There were strips along the walls that were about this big, and however long they needed to be for the room. And between them, they would send sound waves, and it would make the light. So it was a diffuse kind of a light, not a single big bright thing in the middle of the room. And there was a sleep cycle for the dorms. So at a certain point, the lights simply went out. And if you weren't where you were supposed to be, you were shit out of luck. You know? So God help you if you had to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. So this was a military base primarily. The colony parts were almost an afterthought. And we had a opening that we flew our planes in through to land in a cave. And there was a field that had to be turned on or off. Well, it had to be turned off for you to fly in, and then it was turned on immediately afterwards. So you had to coordinate that with the people who ran the place.
And the field
And
would
that
be
was,
like a hologram, or was it also like like a hologram that would cloak the base, or?
no, it was shielding to keep the sandstorms out.
Okay.
It was strong enough that it kept out the raptors.
Uh-huh.
I don't remember the mantids ever trying it. But considering they had ships, it doesn't make sense that they didn't. The Germans and the mantids and the raptors from the northern hemisphere all made peace in about 1990 Earth time. So the raptors in the southern hemisphere, as far as I know, are still fighting. There are other whistleblowers who have talked about the Department of Defense testing weapons on them, which I think really sucks. Going to another planet and blowing up the locals. That's not cool. But what we've got on Mars now is the Germans are still there. They moved the Antarctica base to Mars. They're calling it Neu Berlin. Okay, there was a meeting hall after I was an adult. Okay. There's a meeting hall and a podium at the front, and it had a banner coming down, and it had a swastika. And on the wall behind it, there was a stylized eagle, and in its claws was a figure of Mars with the rift in it. So
the swastika was exactly like the Nazi. You had the black swastika in a white circle on the red background. The same.
Yes.
Okay.
We had that, and that was to represent the Teutonic background of the people, to represent the German tribal system. Some of the rooms would have the black knot. The 3 rings that represent the black sun. The rooms would have that on the wall, usually in a place of honor, because it represented the central black hole of the galaxy, and the lines and circles represented the portal system that the builder race had left behind.
Okay. So that's what the black sun is. The black sun is the central black hole in the middle of the galaxy. And those those zigzag shaped things coming out are the portals.
Are the portals.
Okay.
And they have rows because you don't go directly from the sun to the rim of the galaxy. You have to zigzag through different stars to get some.
So what is the central, just briefly, what is the central idea? Like, what do they worship? They worship the black hole? What's the meaning of it?
They don't exactly worship anything in the traditional terms.
Right.
The official shtick is that religion is the cause of all hatred and warfare on Earth. And so they were not encouraging worship of anything.
Being religious. Okay.
Yeah, being religious was
stupid.
something that would get you into trouble. Um, there were psi abilities that were part of being Black Sun. The initiation into Black Sun was they passed the cauldron around, you know.
We're back to Black Goo.
Yeah, with black goo in it.
Right.
And I mean, you asked about the ceremony. This
Right.
was the initiation into the Black Sun.
Sure.
Was they passed this golden cauldron
Cauldron.
around the room, and everybody drank from it. And if it was your first time, you drank a lot of it.
Okay.
And you were immediately changed. The black goo took you over, made you lots smarter, took away all of your emotions, took away your humanity. So you were, whatever psi abilities you had were enhanced. So you could, you could do things that, I mean, you've seen Star Wars, right? Darth Vader would have been one of us.
Okay.
That we could do all sorts of things, and it was because of the black goo. It would take whatever abilities you had and enhance them. So trying to talk about what you do in Black Sun on an Earth scale without black goo, it's like I don't know how to describe it.
Okay. Okay.
Because it's, and that was the faith of the officer class. So you had all of these people with no humanity left, and they were running the military. And the black goo brought them up to the same IQ level as the Draco and the Mantids and the other ETs we were dealing with. And the enlisted men were not even invited. They were still completely human. So it was a 2-tier system. We had a sign where the jump gate opened up, and it said, Willkommen ins Ares Prima.
Okay.
And then after the CIA took over their half, we added a strip that said, Welcome to Aries Prime.
I see.
But yeah, it was completely in German until the CIA took over half the rent. And then it was the 2 languages. And I was never in the English speaking part.
Okay.
So I have no idea what they had. But I do know that over time, the food printers got better.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure what they did to them, but things got better over time. Well, when I first got there, there wasn't much of one. I didn't get a glass pad at all until I was around 14. So 14, 15. So that would have been around 1970. At that point, it was mostly just documents that had been scanned in, and they were mostly in German. And there were a few that were in English and shared with the CIA. And I don't remember any in Russian until Steve ended up working on it. And that was his baby. He was a year older than I was, and in my group. So we had shared the barracks for this whole 10 years. We had been at Langley together, two doors apart. So we had spent all of our memory together. And suddenly I was a pilot and he was in charge of the MarsNet.
Okay.
And he was told he had to translate everything. I visited him in his cubicle and he had stacks of things that if he had on them for 50 years, there he still wouldn't have gotten to the bottom. And he was supposed to translate everything into English, German, and Russian and upload it and put it into classification because you could only have access to stuff related to your job.
Okay.
Didn't have access to everything. It wasn't like even like the American internet today where that you could just go and surf. You only had access to what you needed for your job.
Okay.
And there was a bootleg section that we would get in trouble if we got caught. But it was music and movies. And sometimes the commanding officer would play the music.
All right.
So rock and roll was really popular.
Okay. So did you?
We were not supposed to listen to it because it was decadent.
Decadent, right? Exactly. So we got to the interesting point. The music. Did you have like old style 20th century German music, I suppose, or was there like a heavy emphasis on like Wagner and others? How was the music?
Wagner is actually considered to be too violent.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
The theme song for Officer Training School was Holst's Jupiter. And there is a song set to that music in Britain that we were singing a German version of it.
Oh, okay.
And that was every day you sang that. There would be a set time of day every day, sometimes every shift, so that everyone on the ship, they used Holst's Mars.
That I suppose that's a German composer, right?
Holst is, yeah.
Holst, yeah.
They used a lot of early, 19th century and early 20th century composers. And they weren't all Germans. Some were, they liked Debussy, they liked Tchaikovsky. So there was a lot of variation, and we mostly heard classical music. But once in a while, the CO would decide to play this bootleg rock and roll.
What did he play?
And
do you remember?
My commander liked the Rolling Stones.
Okay. Amazing.
So I don't know what other commanders played, but my commander liked the Rolling Stones. He also liked who was it that did Johnny Be Good? He liked that one.
So Earth was supposed to be gone, and that music is from the 70s, but they wouldn't tell you where it's from. It's like just music, right?
It's just music. Oh, one of our colonies came up with this.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They actually went that far to lie. Okay.
We knew that there were other colonies, and some of them actually were colonies instead of bases, because we knew they had gone back in time and rescued all of these Germans who had died in the plagues. That's part of why you're not finding bodies of plague victims, is because the Germans went back in time and got them, put them in the regen tank, brought them back to life, cured them of the disease, brought them up to peasant standards, put them in the colonies, where the first generations of them had a lot of cultural issues, a lot of freaking out because things were so different. But their kids picked up on it like, these are smart people.
How did you find out about this? I mean, the 400-year colonies and stuff, because
after I left Mars, I was a navigator. I used to fly ships to these colonies.
Oh, okay.
I mean, look at what Tony Rodriguez talks about Ceres, that when he got there in the 1980s, those were old cities. That they had copied a city in Europe as their colony, including the stadium, but that they had been there long enough that like the metal on the bridges was rusty.
Right. I thought that would be something from the 50s and 60s, roughly.
No.
Okay.
No, it takes longer than that for iron to rust.
That's right.
If it's in perfect use. So, that was him talking about that was my verification that my memory was correct.
Oh my God.
That we had actually time traveled. We had time traveled, gone back and set up these colonies in the past. Now, when you are the navigator, you are stepping into another dimension. And we generally call it hyperspace. Okay, it's the same place that mystics are calling the astral. Now, when you step into hyperspace, you are no longer in time or 3D space. You can step back anywhere you want. It just takes a while to get there. So you can go forward in time. You can go backwards in time. So if you're going backwards in time, 400 years, and picking up these people so you can start a colony, how hard is it to go backwards in time 400 years to start the colony? Another world. It's just a matter of somebody had to think about it. Because somebody had to be the first person to think, well, why don't we try this? And I'll bet you that the first person did it by accident. Because you really have to concentrate on what you're doing to take yourself, the ship, and keep all the people out of the walls. Oh, we call walls bulkheads. So you have to, you remember the USS Eldridge?
Sure.
And the Philadelphia experiment? They ended up in the bulkheads because there wasn't a navigator to make sure they didn't. I was. The machine by itself cannot do it all. It will just treat everything like it's inanimate. But you take the psi ability of the navigator on top of the machine doing it, and the navigator can separate the living things from the inorganic things like walls and keep them apart. And the navigator can also set where you're going and when. And at that point, the machinery is supporting the psi ability of the navigator.
Okay.
So they're a team. So while I was doing this, I had a chip behind this ear that looked like a Bluetooth. I don't know if you guys have them or not. Probably.
We do.
Also had a chip here on my forehead that was about that big around, and it was star-shaped. And that was the link that gave me the visual of a printout. I didn't have a physical screen in front of me, but the chip made my brain think there was.
Uh-huh.
So I didn't see anything that was necessary, including, am I going to come back into 3D and time and there's something there?
Uh-huh.
So I could delay it enough
Oh,
or move it enough to not hit objects. So that was what I did. That's after 1990, I was shipped to Nachtwaffen, the military, and that was what I've done in Nachtwaffen in every alter since. Is I've been a navigator.